Well, I wanted to talk about reverse repo today because I've been hearing a lot about it, and frankly, I couldn't quite entirely wrap my head around it to the point to where I felt like I had anything intelligent to add to this discussion. So thankfully, old Joe Biden came in and saved the day for me by brokering single-handedly a ceasefire, bringing peace once again to the Middle East, unifying the Israelis and the Palestinians once again with his great charisma. And so thanks to him, I have something else that I can talk about while I'm still trying to research the reverse repo issue, which hopefully I'll be able to talk about in depth tomorrow. In fact, it's so late, I think I'll actually be uploading this tomorrow morning, but I'll still do a second one tomorrow, probably on the reverse repo once I have more time to read about it. So, this ceasefire, this conclusion to the latest war between Israel and Gaza, leaves me with more questions than answers about the situation. As of yesterday, after Joe Biden talked on the phone to Netanyahu and expressed sympathy, supposedly, for a ceasefire which Joe Biden's ambassador to the United Nations has vetoed no less than 7 times, including, I think, once today already. Now, to be clear, this is a UN Security Council resolution endorsing a ceasefire, which if Joe Biden himself endorses a ceasefire, I don't know why at the United Nations the United States is opposing a ceasefire. Seems like a pretty obvious contradiction to me. I don't quite understand what this administration is doing, or even what role Joe Biden's supposed support for the ceasefire had to do with anything. So publicly, yesterday, Joe Biden was saying, hey, we want this ceasefire, and I'm confident it's going to happen. And Bibi was saying the opposite after he talked on the phone to Joe Biden, publicly rebuking him, talking about how, you know what, we may need to launch a ground war into Gaza, which to me seemed totally insane. I mean, that's charging headlong into a hornet's nest. I mean, Gaza is a very densely populated place, and the IDF is, not going to be welcome there. The only way that they would succeed is just by gunning down every single person that they saw walking down the street. So I had trouble taking what Netanyahu was saying entirely seriously, but he certainly didn't sound like he was on the brink of agreeing to any kind of truce or ceasefire. Now, Hamas, on the other hand, asked for a truce after 2 days, and today I believe is day 11 of the war. So I figured, if Bibi wanted to, there would be a ceasefire, but it didn't sound like he wanted one. And so what's going on behind the scenes, I don't really know. There's a lot of cross currents here. There's internal Israeli politics, which I think pretty clearly played a role in the start of this war, in Netanyahu launching this war, because, Bibi's career is once again on the rocks. He was unable to form a coalition government. Actually, this happened last year, or was it the year before, too, and I covered that pretty extensively at the time after those Israeli elections. I hadn't had the time to cover them this time around and what's been going on most recently, although maybe I should try and do a deep dive into the recent Israeli electoral politics to try and get caught up on this. But from what I understand, Bibi couldn't form a coalition. I shouldn't say he starts necessarily, because that's a controversial statement, but he engages in this new war with Hamas, and of course creates a huge rift, a brand new rift between Arab citizens of Israel and Jewish citizens of Israel. And thus, as Scott Horton put it, and I think, I hate to give him credit, but I believe Horton heard this from Sarwark, was the first one who suggested that. Now, if you don't know who Sarwark is, you're lucky. Don't worry about who he is. But I just want to give credit where credit's due. If I remember correctly, I believe it was originally him who made this point that, hey, this is a great way to alienate the Arab parties in Israel, who of course are opposed to Bibi and potentially could align with Bibi's opposition in the Knesset to form a new coalition government thus ending Netanyahu's current term as prime minister. But, of course, if there's major tensions between Arabs and Jews within Israel, amongst, Israeli citizens, well, then the Arab parties are not going to be able to form a coalition with any of the Jewish parties. And thus that strengthens Bibi's position. And so if this was Netanyahu's main impetus for engaging in the conflict to begin with, well, seeing as how I think that potential goal, if that was a goal of his, has been achieved, he didn't have a ton to gain by continuing to pummel Gaza with bombs. Because I think that he probably, knows far better than I do that, a ground invasion of Gaza would not be a good idea for the IDF. Because that would mean either the Battle of Wounded Knee, sort of in a modern context, or it would mean the IDF just getting absolutely slaughtered. Because either you take out everyone you can see, because, again, there's no military in Gaza. It would just be ordinary civilians who are fighting against an invading army. So you can't just, look away and not shoot at the civilians. If the IDF went in there, they'd have to kill everybody that they saw, anybody who poked their head up. And, of course, a repeat of the Battle of Wounded Knee, for those of you who don't know, that was a battle in which, battle is sort of a euphemism. It was a massacre in which, I forget what Indian tribe, but there was some Indian tribe that was being moved. I don't think this was the time of the Trail of Tears. I think this was during the Indian Wars, but for whatever reason, they were not. they were in custody. They were not fighting against the U.S. Army, the cavalry at that time. But there was some sort of scuffle or whatever, and the cavalry opened fire and killed them all. Not just the men, but the women and the children too. And so it was a very bad event in American history. That's sort of what a ground war, that would be the best case scenario for a ground war invasion of Gaza. So either it's a PR disaster, or you march your guys in there just to get picked off by every Palestinian with a rifle. So I think that perhaps for all his bluster, Netanyahu might have seen that he has there's nothing more that he had to gain from engaging in this conflict, and so therefore, he has nothing. The best thing for him to do at this point is just to back off, because he's achieved his goal. Because I think Netanyahu knows he's never gonna, depopulate Gaza entirely. He can't just push them all out, because that would create too much of a mess. It would cause, it would stand out too much. It would be impossible for people to defend at that point if he just, pushed out in one fell swoop, pushed all the people in Gaza into Egypt or into the Mediterranean Sea. So the best he can hope for at this point is just to maintain the status quo, and that seems to be the result of this latest Gaza war. So with that said, I will see you folks later in today. Hopefully, I would like to do a second upload, though I guess I can't promise that. And sorry for missing yesterday, which when I'm recording this is actually today, but I'm too tired to upload this. So good night to me and good morning to you.